Okay, so first of all, let's have a look about examination. Okay, so you can browse for aws.amazon.com. Okay, here from products. So just look for AWS training and certification and navigate for AWS certification. And let's go to certification overview. Okay, so these are the levels of AWS certification. You have AWS foundational certification, which is a cloud practitioner, then associate, then professional, then specialty. Okay, anyhow, you no need to start with the foundational, which is cloud practitioner, which is going to cover only few core services. You can directly start with associate level. Okay, so associate level going to give introduction to all core services related to all the domains. Okay, so at associate level, there are three papers. One is solutions architect and sysops administrator and developer. So what is the difference between these three papers? Okay, so there is 90% common content in these three papers. Okay, mostly developer people go for developer certificate. It's going to give, include some additional 10% services regarding developer environment, like code building services and code repository service and code deploy service. When you go for like sysops, it includes like little bit information regarding like some administrative services like AWS managed mail services like that. Okay, so if you are from system administrative background, so you can go for sysops administrator paper. No matter you are from any background, you can plan for solution architect. Either you are developer or a network admin or security candidate or data center candidate or you are fresher, so you can directly start with solution architect. As I said, this what is the difference between these three papers? Only 10% content will be different. No matter you are from any domain, you can start with solution architect. So whatever we are going to cover is solution architect paper. So once you're done with associate level, you can plan for professional certification or specialty paper. If you are interested in DevOps, you can go for like a professional DevOps. Or no, you want to learn more about architect, then you can plan for the professional solutions architect paper. No, you are interested in AWS security specialty, you can plan for AWS security specialty, or you can go for networking specialty and big data or Alexa skill builder or machine learning if you are from developer background. Okay, so as a starting point, you start with associate level when you are studying. So then plan either you want specialty or professional. So coming to exam prerequisite, there is no prerequisites. You can directly take any paper anytime, no matter. You want to write directly specialty, you can write directly specialty paper. Do you want to write professional paper directly, you can write professional paper directly. But starting point, you have to start studying with associate level. Let's say, for example, you may be planning for DevOps engineering. So start with associate level. So study any paper at associate level. Then you can study DevOps engineer and you can directly take DevOps exam. Let's say maybe you are planning for security specialty. So study at associate level, then go study specialty security. Then you can directly take security exam. Okay, coming to examination cost, associate level, each paper will cost about $150. And coming to professional level and specialty level, each paper is going to cost about $300. Okay, passing score will be for associate level 72%, and coming to professional and specialty paper, it's about 75%. Okay, all questions are mostly scenario based questions, multiple choice questions. And each certificate valid for 3 years. Okay, anyhow, there is a certification change taking place from March regarding associate architect paper and big data paper. So you can look for the latest in AWS certification, so you can read information here. Otherwise, you just go for examination paper. So we go to AWS certification, okay, or just click on prepare for an exam. So here you see all the levels: foundational, associate, professional, and specialty. So let's expand that associate level, and then we have solution architect associate, developer, and sysops administrator associate. Okay, let's have a look at this solution architect associate paper. So just navigate to download the exam guide, and you can click on download the exam guide. Okay, this is current examination blueprint. Okay, the exam code is SAAC01. Okay, there are total 5 domains they are going to cover. Okay, if you want to look for new exam paper, okay, we just go one level back and let's look for the latest news in AWS certification. So you can see the new certification. We just click on learn more. So these are the new exam papers which are coming. Okay, the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate, the new exam paper available from March 2020. Okay, and so whichever big data certificate is there, it's broken into 2 certificates. One is database specialty and another one is data analytics. So those papers are available from April 2020. Okay, let's click on exam guide in new exam version. So which is SAAC02, and you can see here new exam blueprint, which is going to cover about 4 domains. Okay, coming to current exam paper and a new exam paper, there is no much difference. Okay, the what is the thing? So the current exam paper also including about like high performance about networking services. Okay, but in exam blueprint they did not mention like some caching related services which exist in current exam paper, but it doesn't mean you need to leave that caching service related things. Okay, because as part of the high performance means networking, like to reduce latency between client and server, still we need to consider caching related service. Okay, so whatever content we are going to cover, it's based on current exam paper and new exam paper. It's up to you which paper you want to take. Okay, if you want to take a new paper, you can start registering your exam from March 1st. If you want to take current exam paper, you can register before end of February. But that exam date valid till March 23. Coming to current exam paper, you can register before end of February. Exam dates available till March 23. If you're planning for examination registration in March, okay, you have to take up new exam paper. Okay, let's have a look at the exam blueprint. So we see the domains, total 5 domains. The first domain is about designing resilient architecture, like choosing reliable and resilient storage solution, and how to design decoupling mechanism using AWS services when you have microservices deployed, okay, and you have distributed environment, like how to design multi-tier architecture, like front-end network, back-end network, how to design availability and fault-tolerant architecture. Okay, so how you deploy your services to avoid single point of failure. Okay, then there is the defined performant architecture. It's about choosing performance, storage, and databases, and how you can apply caching to improve performance. Okay, to reduce the latency between your backend server and the front-end server, or to reduce the latency between your client and your front-end server. Okay, then designing solution for elasticity and scalability. It's about how you can tune your services based on the demand, like how services elastically provided by AWS, and how you can scale services based on your load requirement or okay different criteria. Then domain 3, it's about specifying secure applications and architectures. It's about how you secure your application types using virtual firewalls. Then how you secure the data, like by encrypting the data, and how you can secure data when it is in transit. Then defining the networking infrastructure for single VPC application. Then it's domain 4 is about cost optimized architecture, like how you design cost optimized storage and cost optimized compute. So AWS provide different type of storage services and compute facilities. So each one comes with a different feature and different pricing. Okay, based on your requirements. So which storage service you can use, which compute service you can use. Then finally, defining operationally excellent architecture. Okay, means what are the key things you consider when you are architecting. Then coming to current exam paper. So there are 4 domains, but one domain is missing here, which is about defining operationally excellent architecture. That's not included as part of the exam blueprint. Okay, but anyhow, this is a well architected framework. About it, a guidelines given from AWS, which is going to include different AWS services. What services you can consider when you require a particular requirement. Okay, so here we see it's about designing resilient architecture. So we can see multi-tier architecture solution, high availability and fault tolerant architectures, decoupling mechanism, choosing appropriate resilient storage. See the things similar as in current exam blueprint. Then coming to designing high performance architecture for compute and storage and networking and database. Okay, so if you go to previous paper, okay, so here we can see different things. So regarding compute, so here we see we have like a selecting performance, storage, and databases. Okay, but coming to new exam paper, it focuses on all domain like a you not just not the storage. So it's going to consider what solution you can consider how like a high performance and scalable compute environment and storage and networking and database. Okay, this is what there is difference in current exam paper. So we're going to focus on so what high performing networking and database and compute solution you are going to consider. Okay, and then you have how you secure applications and architecture. Similarly, we see how you secure access to AWS resources, how you secure applications like using virtual firewall, and how you secure your data. Okay, when data is in transit or when data is at rest, okay, how you are going to secure the data. Then we have cost optimized architecture for storage and compute and network. In previous paper, it was focusing on cost optimization for storage and compute. But current paper, it's going to focus on also cost optimized network architecture. So as you see in exam blueprint, they specified domain. They did not mention what services they are going to include in the exam. So anyhow, based on domain requirements, so we have different topics. Okay, like we have EC2 computing, EBS storage, VPC networking and security, S3 also storage. So we have a different services, so which will fulfill the requirement of these domains. Okay, so we are going to cover all these topics, which will meet current exam paper and upcoming new exam paper. Okay, as part of our course, okay, I will share all this documentation, okay, which I keep up to date actually, and I also share recorded sessions. Okay, so anytime you want to refer theory or lab, so you can just refer video. Okay, anytime you have any doubts, you can just approach me. So do you have any question regarding these exam papers?
So the domain fire
Mhm.
those are question papers in question paper they'll occupy this much amount.
Yes, yeah. So you get questions from these domains.
They have mentioned percentage, right?
Yeah,
So
so how much coverage will be
how
there?
much question?
Yes, about designing resilient architecture, there will be about 30% questions. Like high performance architecture, 28% question like that.
The total how much correct.
See, exam is about 1,000 marks. So you have to get 720 associate level. Means you have to get 72%. If you go for professional or specialty, you have to get 75%. So exam is for 1,000 marks.
How many questions should be?
There will be 65 to 70 questions will be there. Okay, so content type will be like multiple choice and multiple response, and there is no negative marks. Okay, anyhow, so in a exam blueprint, it says recommended AWS knowledge, like you need to have 1 year of hands-on experience, those things. It's not necessary. Once you understand those services, you can take up the exam. So when you are reading or when you are studying about a service, so consider what is that service and service related features, what will be the use cases, and what is cost associated with that, and make sure you are able to compare that service with another similar kind of service. So for example, let's say here we have like EBS, this is a storage, S3 also a storage, and Glacier also storage. EBS, think it's like hard disk. Okay, you attach to your server, you are running in the cloud. S3, it's object-based storage, which provides read-write facility, but it is object-based storage. You can store only static data, no dynamic data. Okay, which is high available, durable storage and cheaper than EBS. Then you have like a Glacier storage, that is very cheapest storage in the cloud. Like when you want to permanently backup data to AWS cloud, so you can make use of Glacier storage. Okay, and each service comes with its own feature. Okay, so we see what are those features as we do with course. So once you able to understand those services, able to compare difference between those services, okay, so you are done. So you can clean up the exam. Okay, so this is a course about skill oriented plus exam oriented. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. So we see some introduction to AWS services. From tomorrow we start with EC2 topic.
Sir, one query I have it.
Yeah.
Just to understand, so for example, you talked about different services which Amazon has, AWS has, right? So
Mhm.
when you talk about different cloud technologies like Azure and Google Cloud,
Mhm.
these services are common across, or these are standard, or it would be different for different cloud services?
So once you learn one cloud vendor, it's
Hmm.
easy to learn other cloud vendor. So there will be same kind of services will be there.
Okay. With a
Yeah,
different name, kind of thing. You're
yeah.
saying.
Just different terminologies. There are different configurations will be there.
But concept-wise, it would be the same.
Yeah, concept will be the same. Anyhow, no problem. So I will give introduction to other services and also show you where you can get other cloud related information by comparing AWS services.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so let's start with the introduction. What is data center? And we see the difference between traditional data center, cloud data center. Then we see about AWS regions, availability zone. And we see list of services provided by AWS. Then we see about AWS free tag, then how you access AWS data center and AWS pricing option. So what is data center? So data center is just a repository where you have all your computing facilities. Okay, that houses like computing facilities like your servers, routers, switches, firewall, as well as supporting components like backup equipment, fire suppression facilities, and air conditioning. So your data center may be very simple or it may be complex. Let's say you want to run some servers for your company. Let's say you want a web server, a mail server, DB server. So you bring physical servers and you install operating system to them. So you maybe want to enable communication between them. You purchase like switches and connect them using some medium. Maybe you want to connect to other networks. Like maybe you want to connect to internet. So what you do, you purchase like a router. Maybe you want to protect all your servers. So what you do, you purchase like firewall. So set up in a place, maybe in a room. Okay, that you can say your small data center. Okay, so data center is nothing but the house where you have all your computing facilities. Okay, so data center may be complex, like a dedicated building, or maybe simple within a room or within a floor. So a data center may be private or shared or public. So maybe you have a branch, maybe to serve to branch. What you have, maybe let's say you hosted some servers within the company. So you can say that is private. Maybe you have 10 branches. So 10 branches require like mail services, DB services, application services. Instead of installing all your servers in those 10 branches, maybe you house in a single branch and you share your server to all other branches via like internet. So you can say that is shared data center. Maybe you deployed a data center, maybe you are offering as service to customers. So you can say that is like public data center. Like we say AWS data, AWS cloud service, Amazon cloud service, Azure cloud service. Okay, they are providing public data center facility. Okay, so what is difference between traditional data center and cloud data center? So in case traditional data center, you can visit your data center anytime. You can purchase rack space and purchase devices and vendor license like operating system license or hardware license. Then you configure your server and service. Okay, so you purchase all computing devices like servers, firewalls, routers, switches, and media devices, and you house your data center, maybe in your private space or maybe in third-party space. Okay, third-party space person just take care of normal maintenance, like providing 24 hours of power supply and providing air conditioning and some physical security. So when you go with the traditional data center, the problem is massive upfront cost. You got a project, so you did a guess regarding some application you required. So based on that, you also require some hardware. Let's say with that guess, you purchased like monster servers, means big servers, and some operating systems, applications, and license. Okay, fine, you purchased it. What if those things will not meet your requirement as you go with your project? Nothing to do. So you already purchased it. Okay, with your guess, so you maybe purchased a monster server, means big server, but at the end of the day, so you may be just utilizing 20% capability of your server. So what about remaining 80%? It's wasted. Maybe let's say your project is 1 year or 6 months or 2 years. So with that, you invest a lot of budget and you purchased servers. So once done with project, if those servers are useful for the next project, that will be fine. If not, okay, so you just have to say keep it or you have to sell it as used device. So those kind of issues related with traditional data center. And if you purchase a lot of servers and you have a lot of maintenance to take care, like air conditioning, physical security, power backup, many things. So if you are hosting your data center like in third-party space, okay, data centers are responsible for like general maintenance, like air conditioning, power backup, physical security, but they don't take care about logical security, like protecting servers from like some network attacks. Okay, so they are not responsible for logical security, like protection from network attacks. So but that you need to have like a separate security team. Okay, so you require professionals and you also need to purchase like some security devices. Okay, like DDoS protection tools. So when you go to cloud data center, okay, like when you say Azure, Google, AWS, Digital Ocean, etc. So you cannot visit the data center physically, but how you are going to access data center via internet. Okay, so you make use of like management console, like browser based login. So make use of like Firefox or some browser, or you can make use of CLI based access, like programmatic access. So you just log in and you select your required data center. Okay, so once you select your required data center, then you select and configure required server and service, and it's elastic. Let's say maybe you have a project, so for the project you did guess you require a type of server, maybe a server with like 400 GB RAM, okay, 500 CPU core processor, you launch it. Okay, so maybe that server is not actually required. Maybe you require some more larger server. Okay, you can just terminate that server and you can launch new server. Or you want small server, you can just terminate it and launch more server. Let's say required 1 TB storage. You can provision it. No, you want to scale it to 1000 TB, you can scale it. No, you do not want 1 TB, you want just 500 GB, you can scale it. So service is elastic. So use as your requirement. And there will be no upfront cost. You no need to pay any initial amount. So you use the service once month done, so you get the bill. So in bill they include for what they charge. So you are running for a server. Maybe let's say you are running server for 1 month. So there will be 1 month bill. Maybe you run that server for like 10 hours. There will be 10 hours bill. Maybe you run server for 1 hour. There will be 1 hour bill. Okay, like if you go for storage, like monthly there is small price like per GB data. Okay, so it is like pay as you go service and it is secure. So data center level, all security facilities provided by cloud vendor, like protection from network attacks. Okay, but you need to focus on your application security. Let's say maybe you created web server, data center level security provided by vendor. But like application level security, you need to take care. Let's say you created web application server and your web application server listening on HTTP. So that's your mistake. Okay, so to secure your web server, so serve your server content using like HTTPS protocol. Okay, if it is normal general content, it's okay, you can serve using HTTP protocol. And it's your responsibility to protect the web server or web application server or DB server using firewall solution provided by AWS. Okay, they provide firewall solution at host level and firewall solution network level. Okay, so that is what is the difference between normal data center and cloud data center. Okay, so now coming to AWS. So AWS having global infrastructure, so they are providing global public cloud service. So they divided their data centers regionally. Okay, they have regions wise, and within region they have availability zones. Okay, so as AWS have a global network of infrastructure to run, manage its many growing cloud services that support customers around the world. So as you know, region is a geographic area, and each region going to contain 2 or more availability zones. As of now, many regions contains minimum 3 availability zones, but there are very less number of regions where you can see 2 availability zones or single availability zones. But AWS one will add additional availability zones. So we can have a look at AWS global infrastructure. So just go to choice of your search engine and say AWS global infrastructure. Okay, select the page whichever comes from aws.amazon.com. So we see right now 22 launch regions and 5 announced regions and total 69 availability zones. Okay, across 245 countries. And we see, as statistics says, as of 2019, AWS is in top place. Second place is Microsoft. Third place is Google. Anyhow, at the initial of 2019, first place was took by Microsoft, but again, AWS beat Microsoft. Okay, so when you go for AWS, services are flexible, easy to understand, easy to provision compared to Microsoft. Okay, when you are provisioning services in a cloud, actually AWS is easy, next Google is easy, next Microsoft actually. So we can see AWS global infrastructure map. So there are regions and coming soon regions. Okay, so an availability zone is an actual physical data center within region. So this is where the actual compute, storage, network, database resources are hosted that we as consumer provision within our virtual private cloud. Okay, so when you go to like AWS console, okay, when you make login to AWS data center, so there you have the option to switch between different regions. So we can see different regions like North Virginia, Ohio, North California, Oregon, Hong Kong, Mumbai, Seoul, Singapore. Okay, many regions you can see. Okay, so each region going to have availability zones. Okay, for example, if I go to Singapore, okay, to see how many availability zones over there, you can go to EC2 compute service. That's going to do list of availability zones within that region. And we just scroll down. So we see it's Asia Pacific Singapore. There are 3 availability zones, like 1A, 1B, and 1C. Like go to like say North Virginia region. And just scroll down. So there we see total 6 availability zones. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, 1F. Okay, so you just select the region, and when you are creating a resource like a server or storage or database server, anything, you just select in which data center you are going to place. So here, each region going to have multiple availability zones. So think availability zone like a physical data center. Okay, why do they have multiple data centers in each region? To avoid single point of failure. First thing, to avoid single point of failure. So like instead of running your server in single data center, you can run across multiple data centers. Like a server 1 in availability zone 1, a server 2 in availability zone 1. If something goes wrong with your server 1, which existing in one availability zone, it's okay. Your server, one more copy of server still running in another availability zone. So that can keep providing services. Why server goes down? Maybe something wrong with your server. Okay, maybe some underlying hardware failure, maybe something wrong with your service related settings, or maybe something wrong with data center itself. So in that case, your services goes down. So to avoid single point of failure, so you can run your server across multiple data centers. What that region fails, all your services will fail. So to avoid single point of failure, okay, in case region fails, what you do, you run your service across multiple regions. Like one server within North Virginia region and another server like in CO region, like that. And we have something VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. Okay, let's understand what is this VPC.
Sir, one query related to reasons.
Yes.
What I understand is basically availability zone are the basically actual data centers where your stuff would be there, right? Where your application would be running, right? So
Yeah.
so if you want redundancy between means if you don't want failure, then you run the same application on multiple availability zone, right? Or
Yeah.
multiple regions. So
Yes.
does AWS take care of running? Because if my application or we need to do it manually, means we need to configure in that way.
See, the service like service tuning you have to do. Like can
Okay.
use some service which can do load balancing across region. So
Mm-hmm.
that will give availability of your server in case of region fails.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to use like some kind of load balancing tool that's available regional level only. So that may be load balancing traffic across the servers which belongs to multiple availability
Mm.
zone.
Okay. So that we have to do it. AWS doesn't take care of that part.
No, no. So you can have like a Route 53 service,
Mm-hmm.
that's a domain related service, but you can use it as load balancing. Like you can run like server 1 at region 1, like
Mm-hmm.
server 2 at region 2.
Mm-hmm.
So you can configure Route 53. Okay,
Okay.
serve your customers from these two servers, like
Okay.
from server 1, server 2, or you can make a like prime server 1 is primary, server 2 is like standby. So your Route 53 will be serving your customer from server 1.
Okay.
And this Route 53 also doing health check on all your servers belongs to different region. Let's say somehow region 1 goes down or your server 1 goes down. So
Mm-hmm.
Route 53 will recognize the server 1 is not available.
Mm-hmm.
So customers will get response from server 2.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so you can
Okay.
make use of like Route 53 kind of service to make
Mm-hmm.
sure your service is available even region failures.
Okay. So
Or you
this
can
is
use,
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. So this is our tuning of using the services.
yes.
So in case that service itself goes down, for example, Route 53 itself goes down. Example, I'm
No,
just taking. Then in
it,
that case, AWS will take care of those things.
yeah. Coming to Route 53,
Hmm.
this service not running on single region. This service,
Okay.
whatever underlying things are there regarding Route 53 service, it's
Hmm.
spanned across multiple regions.
Okay.
It's like global service. So
Okay.
there will be no failure of Route 53. There may be failure sometimes or maybe performance issue will be there, but
Hmm.
service totally will not go down because
Okay.
this service running globally across
Oh,
multiple regions.
okay. So to summarize, if I say that if there is a global service which is provided by the AWS,
Mhm.
AWS take care of running all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas if I deploy an application
Mhm.
and for that availability and all, I need to take care of that.
Yeah, right.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So this one gives your services available in region failure. So coming to like you can use like a load balancer kind of service. Okay, to load balance traffic between different availability zones. Like you may say have server 1 in AZ1 within region, and you have server 2 within region. Let's say these two server belongs to North Virginia region. So load balancer will be load balancing the traffic between two servers belong to different availability zones, and it also performing health check. Let's say somehow AZ1 goes down or server 1 goes down, no problem, still server 2 is available, okay, which exists in availability zone 2. Okay, so your customer still getting response from that server 2. Okay, so in coming session we have in detail about, we have Route 53 service then, and we have load balancer as well. Okay, fine. Now let's understand what is this VPC. Okay, so for example, let's take a region. Let's say Singapore region, Asia Pacific, Singapore region. So within that region, there are three availability zones. Let's say this is availability zone 1, availability zone 2, and availability zone 3. So these are three physical data center within Asia Pacific Singapore region. So these three are different physical locations. Okay, like they are like few miles away. Like AZ2 is few miles away from AZ1, AZ3. Like AZ3 few miles away from AZ2 and AZ1. Okay, failure of one data center will not make impact on another data center. Maybe let's say within AZ1, so entire power issue is there or network issue is there, air conditioning issue is there. That will make impact on AZ1 only, but it will not make impact on AZ2. But in case natural disaster, there are the chances to lose all data center. Okay, so now these are the three physical data centers within Asia Pacific Singapore region. So many customers login into Asia Pacific Singapore region, they put their services. Okay, web servers, application servers, DB servers, etc. But how AWS is going to isolate resources belongs to different customers. It's using VPC. You select region, okay, and you define your own portion of space within region by defining VPC, virtual private club. Think VPC is like a virtual private data center. Okay, let's say this is you. So this is your AWS account. So what do? You select your Singapore region and you create your VPC. So you create a VPC. You can give your name. Let's say, for example, like main rack, or you can say like main net. Let's say main network. So you can say 10.0.0.0/system. So you define your like big network, or you define your rack space, and you specify whatever network ID you want, class A, B, C, any IP address, no matter. So you define VPC at regional level, then you define subnets at availability zone level. Like you go to AZ1 and you say subnet 1, and do further subnetting of your main network. Like say subnet 1 10.0.1.0/24. So let's say this is your portion defined over there. Okay, so you thought to avoid single point of failure, so you may be planned to place your server in another availability zone. So what you do to define your own portion of space in availability zone, go and create another subnet to like 10.0.20/24. So here you have your own portion of space. So maybe thought in case AZ1 fails, AZ2 fails, still you want to make sure your service is running. So no problem, you can plan to put a server in AZ3. So to define your own portion of space in AZ3, you go define another subnet. Let's say it's going to be subnet 3. It's a 10.0.30/24. If you are not planning to put anything in AZ3, you just no need to create any subnet in AZ3. So you can put server. Let's say maybe you are planning for web server. You say web 1. You want another web server. Let's say web 2. You are planning for like web 3. Like you say web 3. Any server, the web server, application server, DB, storage, anything. And you can serve all this topic. Okay, means you can serve all these servers topic to your customers using a load balancer. Okay, that's available regional level. Okay, so now let's say another AWS account holder comes let's say this is me. So before I place anything within that Singapore region, what I do, I need to define my own portion of space. So I define my VPC. So I say like a VPC main network 1, and I give some network ID. For example, let's say that is 11.0.0.0/16. Then I go define subnets. So I go define subnet 1, say 11.0.1.0/24, like subnet 2, 11.0.2.0/24. Let's say I am not planning to put anything inside AZ3, so I can leave it. So here, what we have here, VPC. So your account having your VPC and my account having my VPC. So here we have two VPCs. This is your VPC and this is my VPC. So resources are isolated using VPC. How this VPC is defined? Using underlying virtualization and software defined networking. There is no access by default between two VPCs. See, this is your VPC, this is my VPC. By default, there is no communication between these two VPCs. That means there is no communication between your subnet and my subnet. Okay, by that, your resources and my account resources will be isolated. If you want to enable communication between subnets, VPC, we can do it. So that's our responsibility. We can create like a link between VPC, like your VPC to my VPC. So we can create something called as like VPC peering that enables communication between two different VPCs. Okay, no matter you can create multiple VPCs. Okay, you can have like a within Singapore region, you can have multiple VPCs. One VPC maybe you are using for some production one, another VPC you may be using for production two. Okay, or VPC belongs to you, VPC belongs to me. Okay, no matter any VPC belongs to same account, belongs to different account. By default, there is no communication between VPCs. If you want to enable communication between VPCs, you can enable it.
What about the price? It's more servers, more price.
Yeah, you have to pay as you use. You are using more servers, you need to pay pricing. Okay.
So one
Yeah.
query. That diagram which you were showing. Now, one thing is, one account you said can have only one VPC.
No,
Is that
no.
correct?
One account can have multiple VPCs.
Okay, but one VPC does not communicate with the other VPC.
Yeah, one VPC will not communicate with other VPC unless you configure it.
Okay, and other query which I have it. So you took an example of if I create a 3 web server and put a load balancer, and each web server is in different region by creating a different subnet. Is that possible that I can put all 3 web server in same subnet and in different regions?
No, no. See, these subnets are availability zone specific.
Okay.
Whichever subnets you are creating, say subnet 1. When you are creating subnets, you put in a specific availability zone, like subnet 2, availability zone 2. So you define VPC regional level, and you define your subnet within VPC at availability zone level.
Okay, so you're saying if I need to have in different availability zone, those servers have to have a different subnet IP.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And sorry to interrupt. The other question will come up. Maybe you will be covering it. So if each VPC, because these are in different subnet, how the routing will take care? They take care themselves, or we need to take care?
You need to configure.
We need to configure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll understand it when we go to VPC section.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so within a region, each availability zone will be isolated from others using separate power and network connectivity. That minimizes impact to other availability zones should a single availability zone fail. Okay, along with the availability zones, means regionally availability zones, AWS also maintains, okay, no, sorry, I just went to forward, yeah. So in each region, all availability zones will be interconnected. See, let's say this is a region. So we have availability zone 1, availability zone 2, availability zone 3. All these availability zones are connected using low latency resilient fiber connectivity. Okay, so this connectivity between availability zone managed by AWS. Let's say maybe you are running primary server in availability zone 1, secondary server maybe in availability zone 2. You maybe want to replicate data. from availability zone 1 to availability zone 2. Okay, so when you are replicating data, the data replication means data flow will take across that fiber connectivity with high speed link. So you don't need to manage any communication, any link between availability zone to availability zone within region. Again, there is a AWS private connectivity between regions. So as AWS is global infrastructure, they have their own fiber connectivity going on from different regions to different regions, like Mumbai to Singapore, Mumbai to North Virginia, etc. So let's say you maybe want to replicate data, okay, from one region to another region. You have two choices. You can replicate the data via internet, or you can replicate data via AWS infrastructure. Previously, they had image shown about how their fiber connectivity is going. Later on, they removed. So it will be like this. Okay, this is the Mumbai region. So from Mumbai region, there is a link going to next region. Okay, and also going to other region, and also going to another region. And it also having like multiple fiber cables. Okay, they deployed across oceans. So all these are fiber cables between region. So what I mean, AWS maintains a private connectivity between agents to agents. So they have their own fiber cables going on. And AWS also maintains their private connectivity between regions to region. So anytime you want to replicate data, or you want to send some data between regions and availability zones, so you can send it via AWS infrastructure. So by default, data flow within within region, like availability zone to availability zone, it across AWS fiber connectivity. When you want to replicate data from one region to another region, okay, you maybe want to replicate data or just want to send some data. Okay, so you have option either replicate via internet or replicate via AWS private connectivity. Okay, how you make either to replicate data via AWS fiber cable connectivity, which is private connectivity different from internet, or how you can replicate data via internet. Okay, we'll understand how to do that when we go for VPC section. Okay, apart from availability zone, AWS also maintains something called as edge location. The edge locations are dedicated for CDN functionality, okay, which is content delivery network. So you have AWS region. Within region, we have availability zone. So when you are creating some service like web server, DB server, we place it in availability zone. And within region, there is also something called as edge location. An edge location dedicated for CDN functionality. Okay, edge locations are AWS sites deployed in major cities and highly populated areas across the globe. Okay, there is a service name called as CloudFront provided by AWS, which provides CDN facility. Have any idea about CDN, content delivery network? No, it's not about something banking. Okay, so if you look at this topology, so you have like origin server. Let's say this is the web server you are running, okay, or web application server you are running. Let's say you have customer from, let's say this is a customer from Bangalore. Okay, so usually when say communication between a web server and customer, so usually what we do, we deploy communication via internet. Like we connect our web server to internet, customer also connected to internet, and he access it. Okay, see here end-to-end communication between our web server and customer via internet. So let's say maybe how content one on a web server. Okay, let's say website name is xyz.com. So whenever customer says xyz.com content one, his request will go to server and reply will come back to customer. See here total communication between customer and client via internet. Internet is not stable network. Sometimes you may get good bandwidth, sometimes you get bad bandwidth. Okay, let's say in this kind of scenario, let's say it may take about 100 milliseconds latency. Let's say customer got that content in 100 milliseconds, or let's say maybe 1000 milliseconds. Okay, so see, And many customers from globe may be trying to access your xyz.com service, and it's serving with 1000 millisecond latency. So that may make bad impact on business. But customer may feel your site is not good, service is not good. Now, key thing here, we need to reduce the latency between our website and customers. Okay, to reduce the latency, we can take advantage of CDN facility. Okay, how it is going to work? We take advantage of CDN facility. Okay, let's say this is the web server, www.xyz.com. And here we have something called as CDN facility. This is a caching facility deployed in major cities. Let's say this is CDN belongs to Bangalore. And let's say another CDN. Let's say this is CDN belongs to Delhi. Okay, CDN is a facility that's deployed in major cities. Okay, like California. Okay, or Washington, etc. Now, content delivery network, CDN content delivery network. Here, so here in previous case, we had end-to-end communication via internet. But in this case, the CDN is connected to your local ISP. Let's say whatever ISPs exist in Bangalore, it's connected to CDN and their customer also connected. Okay, behind scene, this CDN facility connected to the www.xyz.com using private link. So here we have two links. One is this is private line. Okay, who manages that line? The CDN vendor. And next, the CDN again connected back to respect to local ISP. Okay, now let's say we have content one. And whatever the private line we have, that comes with high bandwidth and low latency. So in this scenario, let's say maybe customer want to request content one. So whenever customer says www.xyz.com content one, the customer request will go to nearest CDN. See, let's say this is user from Mysore or Bangalore. So which is nearest CDN for Mysore, Bangalore or Delhi? Which is nearest Bangalore? So request will go to nearest CDN. So as CDN will see then nothing there. So what CDN will do? CDN will send request to actual server to your www.xyz.com, and it will retrieve the content one, and it will keep a copy inside its memory, and it provide to the requesting customer. Okay, in this case, so latency between a CDN and end user maybe let's say 5 milliseconds, and coming to www.xyz.com to CDN connectivity via high speed dedicated private line, maybe let's say it's going to be 5 milliseconds. Now overall, it will be 10 milliseconds. In previous case, latency was 1000 milliseconds, but in this case, 10 milliseconds. So let's say another customer comes. Let's say this is maybe from, let's say, Bangalore user. So maybe let's say this customer requesting same content, www.xyz.com content one. His request will go to local CDN. As content already cached, then it provided immediately back to customer. So now how much latency? 5 milliseconds. Okay, so CDN can be used to reduce latency between your customer and your content. As content cached in nearest CDN, so customer will get immediately content from nearest CDN. So like that, it's going to reduce latency. Okay, so anyhow, who manages this CDN? Okay, there are many vendors who manages CDN, like AWS. AWS having their own CDN facilities deployed globally, and even Google have CDN services. Even Microsoft also having CDN services like Akamai ghost. Akamai ghost is the top player for CDN facilities. When you go for like Microsoft also having their CDN facilities globally, but all CDN facilities not maintained by Microsoft. Okay, they get support from Akamai ghost. They take advantage of Akamai ghost. But AWS having their own CDN facilities globally. Okay, so where this CDN facilities deployed? It's deployed in edge location. So in region, we have availability zones, data center, where we put our services. If you want to take advantage of CDN facility, So you make use of edge locations. Okay, there are many edge locations, then availability zones. So we can have a look at the list. Okay, here it says point of presence. Okay, they have total 216 totally. They have 205 edge locations, like CDN within country, means within a region, and they have some 11 point of presence. Okay, which are CDN at regional edge level. So we can have a look at regions and availability zones, and we can see like in North America, and we see like regions like Ohio region, there are 3 availability zones. Like Oregon region, there are 4 availability zones, and there are something government cloud. Okay, government cloud means these regions exist within US soil, and those data center access available to only like their native citizens, like USA customers only. And we can see edge locations. We can see like Ashburn, like Atlanta, Boston, Chicago. Coming to this locality, so we can look at Asia Pacific, and these are the regions. So for example, if you look at Asia Pacific Mumbai region, there are 3 availability zones. And we can see here edge locations: Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, New Delhi, etc. So edge locations are dedicated only for CDN functionality. Okay, you are running some server in AWS cloud. Maybe you are running some server on premise. If you want to take advantage of CDN's functionality, so you can make use of AWS service called as CloudFront. Okay, anyhow, we have a dedicated session about that. So we have the CDN service. Okay, we see how we can deploy a CDN functionality for running service. Okay, so now you understood what is region and availability zone is the data center and edge location dedicated for CDN functionality. And also you understood what is VPC. Okay, to define your own portion of space regionally, you create a VPC. And to define your own portion of space at availability zone, you create subnets. Okay, now let's have look at some AWS services. Okay, we are just going to list the services provided by AWS, few services, but actual services we are going to cover as we have here documentation like EC2, EBS, VPC, etc. Okay, so coming to AWS platform, so AWS platform provides services related to many domains: networking, database, developing, machine learning, artificial intelligence, okay, many things. Whatever thing you can do in your local data center, all those things can be done on cloud. What is the difference? You don't manage physical servers. Okay, you don't manage physical server. Everything managed by AWS. Okay, coming to networking, so you create a VPC that will allow you to define virtual data center. You can create VPN, like VPN connection between one VPC to another VPC. Let's say you have 2 VPCs belongs to different region. You can create VPN. Or you may want to create VPN between VPC, means AWS data center, to your private data center. You can create VPN. And you have direct connect. Direct connect also VPN, but the VPN connectivity takes place across AWS infrastructure, not internet infrastructure, which is more secure solution, which comes with good bandwidth and stable network and lower price compared to internet charges. Like Route 53, that's the domain registration service. And coming to compute, so we have EC2. Using this service, you can create virtual servers in the cloud. And you have EC2 container. You can create container server as well. What is container? It also virtual machine, but lightweight virtual machine. Okay, I will explain in detail what is container, how it is different from virtual machine. So when we go to specific topic, and we have Elastic Beanstalk. This is the AWS managed service. Let's say you have developer team, but they don't know how to create the servers. No problem. They can just take their application code, upload to Elastic Beanstalk, and they just need to say what is the platform. Is it PHP code, Java code, Python code, whatever. Elastic Beanstalk automatically create required infrastructure, required servers, required storage, required database server, and required firewall. And you have Lambda, that's serverless computing. So when we say serverless computing, that doesn't mean there are no servers. What that mean actually, you don't manage any server. You just focus on your application code. Rest of thing managed by vendor. And you have storage, like different storage services, like S3, object-based storage, EBS, think it's like hard disk, CloudFront, CDN facility, Glacier, very cheapest storage, like you have EFS, FXX. These are AWS managed file servers, like storage gateway. Let's say on-premise, you have an application that generates a lot of data. To store that data, you require some storage. You need to purchase bunch of storage devices. Instead of that, let your application generate a lot of data. You can store the data in cloud storage, but you require a mediator between your on-premise application and cloud storage. So that is storage gateway. And you have database. So AWS allows you to create, manage RDS, non-RDS database solution. And there is the DMS service that can be used to migrate on-premise database servers. And you have analytics services. So AWS provides different analytics services like EMR to do analytics on big data, like Athena. That is AWS managed analytics tool. Like you have Kinesis that can be used to capture streaming data, like streaming data from GPS devices, streaming data from log servers, to capture streaming data from like some social media sites. Okay, then you have security identity. You have IAM identity and access management. So you can create different user accounts and you can give different limited access to even internal employees. Like let's say you have database team, you can create a database user and you can say this user can manage only DB servers on AWS cloud. You maybe have a network team, you can create network user and you can say this user can manage only VPC, like that. And you have directory service like inspector, web application firewall. Web application firewall, it's a special firewall which can be used to protect your web servers from common type of network attacks like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, like that. And there are cloud HSM, KMS. These services can be used to manage the keys. The keys we use for encryption and decryption of the data. Okay, and there are management tools like CloudFormation that provides like infrastructure as code service, CloudWatch, it's a monitoring service. So you run many services in the cloud. So to monitor them, you require a tool. So there it comes, CloudWatch service. And you have CloudTrail, Config. These are auditing tools. And you have application services that can be used by developer team. And you have developer tools that also can be used by developer tools like code commit. It's like GitHub. So developers usually they store their codes on GitHub repository. Okay, if similar kind of service provided by AWS called as code commit. No matter your developer can use GitHub or code commit. Even they can migrate the code from GitHub to code commit as well. Like code build to build the code, code deploy to automate code deployment to your servers, and mobile services. So your application means developer team can make use of mobile services platform to develop their mobile applications and test those mobile applications before release in production. Like enterprise application like Workspace that provides desktop via browser service like Citrix Receiver. Workdocs like for sharing documents like webmail service and IoT services, and artificial intelligence services and migration service like Snowball can be used to migrate your data, means storage from on-premise to AWS cloud. You have DMS service if you want to migrate database server to cloud, and you have SMS service. Let's say you have web server, application server, or CRM, some CRM application server already running on-premise. You may be planning to migrate them to cloud. You can make use of SMS service, server migration service. Okay, this is about just listing, okay, few services provided by AWS. So when you look at the console, so there are many services provided by AWS. So we see compute section, machine learning, blockchain, satellite, storage, application integration. So there are many services. Okay, anyhow, nobody can master everything. Okay, because there are platforms, domains, like database domains. So when we take database domain, so they master about database. Maybe you have like some developer team. Maybe they are focusing on machine learning. They can go with these services. Okay, like you have developer team, so they can make use of developer section, like from compute they have like Lambda and application integration. Okay, those services. Okay, so what we are going to cover is about core services, about compute, storage, database, networking, security, high availability, and fault tolerant, and monitoring. So we have different topics over here. It's okay if you're not from a specific domain. For example, we cover database. It's okay even you don't know about database. We are going to cover high level concepts. What is database? What are the different type of database like RDS, non-RDS? And we see here about how to provision infrastructure for database server, and how enable high availability and fault tolerant, and how enable security, and how you deal with backup and restore. Okay, those things. Like you have topics like application integration services. So these services actually used by developers. Okay, application developers. But as an architect, you need to know what are those services. So we are going to cover application integration services. Okay, like a simple workflow, simple queue service, like API. Okay, we see high level concepts about that one. Like Lambda, serverless computing, usually handled by developer team. But as architect, you need to know what is it. Okay, what is actually functionality of that one. So we are going to cover high level concepts. So here few services like application service, Lambda, like a database, we are going to cover related high level concepts. Okay, and there are core services like compute, storage, load balancer, security. Okay, about them we are going to cover in detail. Okay, to sign up for AWS, so what do you require? You require any email ID like Yahoo, Google, or even your company email ID. And once you making sign up for AWS, just provide your email ID. You just define different password, and you require your phone number for verification purpose. And you can provide a valid credit card or debit card. AWS accepts credit card or debit card. But if you go to other vendors like Google, Azure, they accept only credit card. So anyhow, AWS provides a free tier for 1 year. Okay, if you go to Google, Azure, they provide a free tier, but for only 1 month. So you can, okay. So first of all, see how you can create AWS. Just you say AWS console or aws.amazon.com. So you just go with create an AWS account, or you can just go with create a free account. There is no separate account methods to create account for like practice production. This is the common procedure to create account for production purpose or practice purpose. Just provide your email address, set a new password, and confirm the password, and just give some display name. Then go with continue. Next, provide okay addressing details, then phone number, then credit card or debit card. Once done, so your account will be ready. So when it is asking to choose support plan, go with basic support. There are other supports available, but paid support. Okay, it's like customer care support. Do you want technical support from them? Okay, like you are running business application, so you want to make sure your application goes never goes down. So you may be required application related, some technical support, vendor related technical support. You have to go with paid plan. Okay, as a practice purpose, just go with basic plan. Okay, that's not charged. Even for basic plan also they provide support, only general support, not technical support. Like maybe working with some EBS, maybe something wrong, you don't know how to create EBS, something. So in that case, you need to purchase paid plan. So they give interaction using phone or using mail method. When you go for general support, sorry, basic plan, you also get support, only mail support. And how quickly they respond, there is no guarantee. With basic plan, there may be response in 30 minutes, maybe in 1 hour, 2 hours. But when you go for paid plan, Okay, there are different paid plans. There is like you can get response within like 15 minutes, like 30 minutes, like that. And you, here it is aws.amazon.com free. Okay, so here the services which falls under free time. We can say EC2. EC2 means virtual server. So you can run 750 hours. So we can see you can run a T2 or T3 micro Windows server and a Linux server. T2, T3, a micro Windows server or Linux server. So that's available for 12 months. So anytime you are launching a server, that may be type T2 or T3 for a Windows machine, for Windows OS or Linux OS, for 1 year you will be not charged. Like S3 storage, 5 GB free. Like RDS database server running on T2 micro hardware. Okay, maybe MySQL DB or PostgreSQL DB, MariaDB, Oracle or SQL. That's available for 12 months for free time. Okay, if you launch like some additional EC2 instance, additional DB servers, like more than 5 GB S3 storage, you will be charged. Okay, it's okay. You can launch additional things. You don't need to stick like you want to launch only one micro Windows server, one Linux server. Okay, as your practice requirement, launch additional server. It's okay. Run them few hours, practice and terminate. Okay, whatever pricing is there, it's small price, reasonable price, few cents they charge. Okay, so as a practice, you no need to stick with free time. Okay, so there is no separate way if you want to launch any additional server, same account, same procedure. As long as you are running one micro Windows server, one micro Linux server, there is no charge. If you want to launch some additional server, you can launch. But as a practice purpose, you don't go for extra large servers. They may be charged like $1 per hour. You consider your server size based on what workload you are going to put on that server. As a practice server, go with small quantity only. Like when you are creating storage, go with small storage. Okay, so how do you access AWS? One method, AWS Management Console. So that is browser-based login. Just say AWS Management login, or just go to AWS Management, sorry, aws.amazon.com, or you just simply type AWS Console. Go to your choice of search engine. You can say simply AWS Console. Okay, same. This is the captcha. So just click on AWS Management Console. You can download a mobile app and just say login. So just provide your email ID and next step password and just login. So once login, so you have AWS Management Console. So you get the dashboard and choose your choice of service. Then you can switch to your choice of region. And another method, so you can also make use of command line interface. You just need to install AWS CLI tool on Windows machine or Linux machine, Mac machine, and you can access using CLI as well. So you do all configuration using commands like create EC2 instance, create EBS volume, like that. Also, you can make use of like a SDK, software development kit. Okay, AWS provide SDK for different language, Go, iOS, Java, JavaScript. That means like say you are good in Python, you can install Python SDK, and you can give instruction in the form of Python language to provision your services, resources in AWS cloud. Okay, so as we go, our major focus will be based on AWS Management Console, but I also show you how to make use of CLI and some third-party API tool when you are working with AWS. So exam perspective, examiner will not ask any comment. Okay, it's up to you how you are going to manage using Management Console or command line tools. Understood. So AWS pricing option, there is no upfront payment, pay as you go. Save when you reserve. Let's say you may be planning to run a server, you launch a server, you'll be billed per hour basis. Let's say you know you are going to run that server for longer time, like 1 year, 2 year. In that case, you pay, you purchase it as a reservation. When you purchase a server as a reservation, you tell to AWS, I'm going to run this server for 1 year. I will purchase it as a reservation. What AWS is going to do, it's going to give discount. Up to 75% discount will be. Pay less by using more. When you are using more resource, okay, for further resources, they give discount based pricing. Even you can estimate charges using AWS pricing calculator. Okay, I will show you AWS pricing calculator after covering some services, right? Okay, so what you did understand from this introduction session? So you understood the difference between a traditional data center and cloud data center. Okay, cloud data center exists in remote place, hardware, everything managed by vendor. You just log in into the data center and you provision your resource as you want. Okay, and you also understood the AWS regions. Within region, there are availability zones. This is the physical data center where you deploy all your storage, servers, etc. And you also understood edge locations. The edge locations, think they are like a mini data centers, but they are dedicated for CDN functionality. And you understood what is VPC. By creating VPC, you define your own portion of space, regional level, and you create subnets to define your own portion of space at availability zone level. So VPC is region specific and subnet is availability zone specific. Okay, when you go to other cloud, same thing. Okay, but when you go to Azure, you call VPC as VNet. When you go for Google, you call VPC as VPC. Okay, subnet is a common terminology on all cloud. But one thing, so in AWS, you define VPC regional level. Like in Azure, you define VNet, that's equal to VPC regional level. But when you go for Google, you define VPC globally. Okay, that's only difference. And we just had a look at AWS services, just list of services. Anyhow, we did not master any service. We just had a look at AWS services. Just to list, AWS provides services regarding all computing domains, means all IT domains. And you also understood AWS certification. And you also understood how you can access AWS data center, either using management console or programmatic access like CLI or SDK, right? Okay, this is just a introduction to AWS. What is AWS and the different type of services. So coming to next session, so we have EC2 topic. Before we start EC2 topic, we cover a small portion of VPC, because before we put something there, we define VPC. Okay, we have looked at basic VPC topology. As per that, we create VPC and subnet and connectivity to internet. Then we start with EC2 topic, computing. That's next we cover EBS, that storage. Think it's like hard disk. Then we cover in detail about VPC. Okay, like EC2 will take one session, EBS will take one session. VPC is a big topic. We divide it into 2 sessions. Like we have S3 storage, then load balancer, auto scaling, CDN, Snowball, Route 53. So one by one, we go cover all those topics. Okay, so that's it about this session. So let me know if you have any questions.
So how much of it is auto configured and how much we have to configure in this case?
No, it's not about like auto configure or something. See, like say for example, if you go to EC2, what you do? You just create your virtual server. Like say, usually, let's say you want to create virtual machine on premise. What do? You purchase physical server. Upon that, you install like some virtualization software like EXXI, Gen, something. Upon that, you create a virtual machine. So here you manage your hardware. You manage your virtualization software like EXXI, and you manage virtual machine. When you go to cloud, you no need to manage hardware. You no need to manage your virtualization software. What you do manage only just VM. And what you need to consider on premise, let's say purchase server is not enough. You need to add additional resources like more memory, more CPU. Okay, like that. So in case cloud, you don't need to do that. You just work with your VM, create VM with the operating system. Then you are responsible for VM, like operating system management, patching, then hosting your application like that. Like when you go to like EBS or S3, you don't need to manage any storage hardware. You just provision what you want. You want 1 TB, create 1 TB EBS storage. You want 1000 TB, you can scale it like that. Okay. Like anyhow, there will be limitation. Like when you are creating EBS storage, it's hard disk. You can go with minimum anything. You can create like maximum 16 TB storage, a single EBS volume. Okay. If you want more than 16 TB, create another EBS storage like that. Right. Yeah. Just go to this side like products and certificate. Sorry, products, AWS training and certification, and AWS certification overview, schedule and exam. Yeah, you log in with your shopping account, like
Sure.
maybe country wise or global, Amazon.com or Amazon.in. Log in with the shopping account, select country, city, your exam center, and proceed with payment with the debit or credit card. That's it.
Sure.
So what you suggest? Should we go over a new exam or a older one?
It's up to you, but my content will cover current exam paper and new exam paper. You no need to worry about content. Okay, so take the exam when you are ready. Okay, don't make hurry. Okay, compared to see, this is not about just single domain. It's just not networking topics. It's not just like some server topics. This is going to consider topics from multiple domains. So what is the thing is you need to understand well about those services. What will be the use cases and pricing option. So once you are ready with that, you can take up the exam.
Okay, thank you.
So even don't worry, I will provide some practice questions. So that will also help you to prepare for the exam. So anyhow, when you are looking at exam blueprint, there you can see some sample questions, about 10.
And one more thing I want to know, like for hiring from using this certification, like what all, where do I get hired?
Come again?
Using this certification, where I can get hired, in which company? Like,
See,
or
whichever
like
company planning to adapt to the cloud or maybe already adapt to the cloud, so you can accept jobs from those companies.
I've seen like description like migration from Azure to AWS. Like that description.
Yes, it's a description will be available, migrating on-premise servers to AWS cloud.
So we have to be ready with Azure and all. Like, super,
Yeah, it's good to have knowledge from multiple domains. Like good to have knowledge from like multiple cloud vendors. Maybe some companies using a single cloud vendor, and some companies may be using multiple cloud vendors. But for example, let's say maybe company already having some Windows licenses purchased, so it's good for them if they are going to run server on Azure. Maybe to run some services, they may be considered it's good with AWS. The companies may be running their services in AWS. It's up to company. Okay, they may be using multiple cloud vendors or single cloud vendor. Okay, as you know, the many companies adapting to the cloud. Okay, so till okay, but if you consider see in overseas, many companies adapt to the cloud. Okay, coming to India, but starting from 2020, there are many companies who are planning to adapt to the cloud. Okay, till 2019, there are some companies adapting to the cloud, but started era with 2020, many companies adapting to the cloud.
Sir, how much of it is important